Okay. Thank you. I think we are live now. So welcome to the Mazars Women of Water virtual edition. Thank you all for joining us. On today's panel, we're going to focus on mentorship in the water sector. My name is Chase Drosos. I'm a senior manager at Mazars, and I am honored to kick it off today. If you remember, or if you don't, last January, we hosted an inaugural Women of Water Summit in Washington, D.C. We had a full day discussion, very interactive discussions with underlying theme of elevating women in the sector and also diversity and inclusion. So we're looking forward to our next live in-person event, but until then, we're carrying that momentum from this past January's summit into monthly panels as a way to stay connected and continue the discussions. So Mazars, we have a unique combination of passion for the sector, as well as social consciousness. And we have, for example, our leadership programs like Women at Mazars. We also share our industry passions through some of our contributions to this sector, such as our Mazars US Water Outlook. Our 2021 survey is actually recently gone live, and this will be the backbone to our 2021 Water Outlook. And we do have a focus in there actually this year on diversity and inclusion. And we're hoping to build some benchmarks and share those views in 2021 once we have responses to that survey. So we will put a link in the chat to that, but please, just save it for later and complete it after this exciting panel today. We also encourage you to use that chat to interact with the panelists. You can please post questions or comments. We would like it to be interactive. We're going to have a Q&A toward the back end of the discussion today. So, with that, I would like to introduce our panel. Again, it's focused on mentorship in the water sector. It's an immensely important topic, especially within our current environment where we're working remote and a little bit more disconnected than we normally would be. So we'd like to thank our moderator, Megan Schneider, and our panelists, Priya Lou Casey, Karen Maynes, and Jay Cooper, for their commitment to this topic and openness and willingness to discuss it today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan, and thank you all again.
Thank you, Chase, and a big appreciation to Mazars for creating this space to have these conversations, and so much gratitude to the organizing team. Thank you, Chase and Kendra, Teresa, Samantha, Kate, and everyone else in making this happen. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us today. So with all that being said, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you all who are here in the audience. And so we have a few polls set up. We'd love to know what your current role or level is in the water sector and how many years of experience that you have in the water sector and what your current mentor or mentee relationship status is. So I think it'll take just a couple seconds for the polls to launch. So the first poll should be launched. And if you can just respond, we'll start seeing some responses. So we have some managers, we have some C-suite executives. If you click on that poll tab on the right side of your screen, you should be able to see and respond. We have a few more managers. We've now launched a second poll, which now allows you to respond and let us know how many years of experience you have in the water sector. So 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, or more than 15 years in the water sector. Looks like we have a nice range of entry level to C-suite and from 1 to 15 plus years in the industry. Quite a lot of veterans on this webinar. That's great. And then our final poll for this morning is, what is your current mentor and mentee relationship status? Are you currently a mentee or mentor or both? Or are you seeking a mentor or mentee or want to be a mentor? So we have a lot of individuals who are here with us today who are both a mentor and mentee, and some who are seeking a mentor or mentee. That's wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for letting us know who you are. Again, if you click on the chat tab, you're also welcome to ask us any questions or even chime in and let us know where you're joining us from. And with that, I'd love to introduce the rest of our panelists and give them an opportunity to share a little bit about themselves, their background, so you can get a little bit more perspective on where we're coming from. We'll start with you, Karen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Maynes. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for CTWS, and that includes Connecticut Water, Heritage Village Water, and Maine Water companies. I also work closely with our parent company, which and all the entities under San Jose Water Group. I've been with Connecticut Water, or CTWS, for over 8 years. I've been doing human resources for over 20, and I'm also a certified professional coach. And I'm excited to be here with everybody today because mentoring is a huge part of our employee strategy. I'm excited to learn from everybody else and hopefully share something.
Thank you, Karen. How about you, Priya?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Priya Lou Casey. I'm with Jacobs Engineering, and I am currently a National Strategic Pursuit Leader for the organization. So my background is in engineering, and I did that for a very long time before transitioning with the benefit of mentoring to our full-time sales team. I'm located in Houston, and let's see, I've been with Jacobs since Legacy CH days from 2005, and I've been in the industry for over 22 years.
Thank you so much, Priya. We're excited to have you and Karen on the panel, and Jay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jay Cooper. I'm the Vice President, General Counsel, and Secretary of Middlesex Water Company. I've been a practicing attorney for over 22 years now. All 22 of those years have been in public utilities law and regulation. Over the course of my career, I've seen great change in the legal profession in terms of the rise of women through that profession. It's a very different profession than it was 22 years ago when I first joined. And over the course of my career, I've both been mentored by women in the industry, and it just turns out everybody who's direct reported to me over my career have all been women themselves. And so I certainly have a perspective from both sides of the mentorship tree in terms of women in our industry.
Thank you, Jay. And I will be moderating this panel, and I'm really excited to have these conversations with Priya, Jay, and Karen. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Megan U. Schneider, and I am the president of Seven Management and Consulting. I also am elected to serve on the Municipal Water District of Orange County Board of Directors, where we're a wholesale agency for 3.2 million customers here in the County of Orange in Southern California. So I'm the West Coast person here on the call today. And in addition to what I do in my day job, so I'm a reformed chemical engineer. I love and process optimization. And while I studied process optimization in college, I quickly realized that my passion is for helping optimize people and people-driven processes. And so today I spend my career helping optimize organizations and businesses and really looking at the business strategy. And I'm really excited to embark on my final degree, I hope. I keep saying I'm done with school, and here I find myself going back. So I'm going back for an executive doctoral program with the University of Pennsylvania for the Chief Learning Officer PhD. So I'm really excited to have you all here and really excited to have this conversation, because I think mentorship sparks a lot of preconceived notions as well as ideas, but it's also something that we really value as important. And as shown through our polls, so many of you are here today because you value mentorship, because you value the mentor that you have or the mentees that you have, or you'd like to give back in many different ways. And so we want to take a deep dive into some of those conversations. And I just want to kick it off by asking some of our panelists, what does mentorship mean to you personally, and why is it important to you? And we'll start with you, Priya.
That's a great question, Megan. So for me personally, because mentorship has played such an extraordinary role in the progression of my career and my personal life, I think mentorship is a dynamic relationship with other people who may or may not be within your direct organization that help benefit you, help share, open up your perspectives to how you should, maybe thinking about things, giving you the benefit of years of experience or other kinds of experience that you don't have yourself, and really help shape the context for what may be possible. And mentoring is not necessarily something that's like a stiff and stodgy formal relationship with one or two people that you are forced to have over some period of time. It can happen in really small ways too. And I, looking forward to talking to you guys about that, what I'm calling micro mentoring. I think it's a very important thing to have in one's life in general. And it probably is already happening, even if you don't think it is. And hopefully today we can share with you some perspectives on how to recognize it and how to cultivate it and how to ask for something when you don't know how to ask for it.
Those are all so wonderful, Priya. Karen.
I am so latching on to that micro mentoring term, Priya.
Sure.
You need to somehow trademark it so I can always credit you because, we're not a formal organization. Obviously we have a formal structure, but, we deal with such a broad range of people that, the better that we can meet people where they are and mentor people for what their immediate needs are, the better. So, for mentoring for me is very specific. It's people who are brave enough to give me really critical feedback when I need it, who can say, I noticed this and I think you can do better, or that will know how stubborn I am and know how I am and say, hey, maybe you should ask me questions to help me get there, because it's so important. I think we would find it hard to get time to say, oh, I have to meet with a mentor. But those mentoring moments where somebody is brave enough to give you that feedback is what's really. And then the other piece about, why is mentorship important to me? Organization in the water industry, we keep talking about the silver tsunami and the gray wave and all that. We've really used mentoring as a way to grow our own. And we find through mentoring, you can get people who not just know the book piece of it, but they actually understand the parts that are unique to your company or your region or that treatment plant. So we've really looked at it as a knowledge transfer and a succession.
That's so wonderful, Karen. How about you, Jay?
So mentoring to me means using your leadership skills as a mentor to draw out the leadership skills in others, and to make sure that those who you are mentoring realize that they are part of something that is bigger than themselves individually, to embrace every aspect of that, and to also embrace adversity, embrace an issue or a problem or a task that takes that person outside of their comfort zone, and to give them that experience of handling a problem where there are no easy answers. The success of a mentor is going to be, have you developed that future leader? Have you developed that person who can then take what they learn and not just be a leader within a company or an organization, but can they use the leadership skills that they've attained to now turn around and pay that forward to the next generation?
Absolutely. And I think all three of you guys highlighted on something that's so important to recognize, right? Is, your mentor is really somebody who's providing you a different perspective. And so as we've shared in many of our conversations prior, leading up to this webinar, your mentor doesn't have to be older than you or more senior than you or anything like that. It could simply be somebody who looks at things differently and sees things from a different perspective. And what I really like about how all of you guys highlighted this, and I really want to emphasize, is that it's intentional. It may already be happening. Sometimes you have to create the time and space to have those conversations, but all of it is so intentional. And so I think it's really important, and I hope one of the takeaways from today's webinar for our attendees is to really recognize that if it is already happening in your life, recognize that mentor or mentee and thank them for their time and thank them for their commitment, and really give them that affirmation and show that intention that you appreciate the investment that they're making into you, or that you recognize the investment and of that time. And I really like that concept of those micro mentoring or mentoring moments. And it really does come from moment by moment. And that applies to anything in life, right? Any major change and lasting change we want to create, it doesn't happen drastically overnight. You can't have some massive mentoring powwow for 30 minutes and suddenly become transformed. It's those micro mentoring moments that create those little thoughts and those little inspirations that lead to that lasting change. And so I so appreciate all of you for sharing that. And I'm hoping that this encourages many of our attendees to really think about it a little bit and recognize, wow, I am mentoring someone, or wow, this person is mentoring me. And that kind of segues really well into our next question, where quite a few potential mentors often hesitate to mentor because of that fear of failure or making a mistake. I've often heard people say, well, I don't want to be responsible for giving them bad advice. And so what advice would you give to someone who is considering giving back as a mentor, but maybe has some reservations about their ability to mentor or giving quote unquote bad advice? We'll start with you, Jay.
Well, what I would advise is you cannot really be a leader and you cannot really be a mentor if you have a fear of failure, because one of the most important lessons you're going to teach as a mentor is about failure. The best way I've found in my career to foster leadership skills in others, and that's what we're trying to do here as mentors, is to give that person responsibility. If, for example, in my legal world, give them responsibility over a case or a legal research question or a project, and allow them to run with it, sometimes with minimal interference or no interference by you, the mentor. And at times, allow them the space to make mistakes and to learn with them. Experience is an excellent teacher, but failure is an outstanding teacher. And it ultimately gives others the confidence to be able to handle projects outside of their comfort zone and to build leaders. So you can't build a leader if you're afraid. And you cannot adequately mentor someone if you can't teach that person about failure.
Yeah, that's absolutely so true. And Karen, you've been nodding your head a lot, so I'm assuming you have some thoughts to share.
Yeah, we have a leadership development program that it's very new, but it's fairly structured, and it's really about developing those frontline leaders to get to the next level. And one thing to get rid of some of the stigma around the word mentoring is we invite VPs and we ask them to speak to the group about something that went terribly wrong, a time that they failed. And it was so powerful because it really made them more relatable and approachable, vulnerability there. And I think once the relationship is to the point where the person and the mentor both understand you're working on this together, you're both trying to improve, you both learn, I think it just fast tracks that experience and what you can get from each other.
Absolutely. And I'll just share, years and years ago, I had a mentor, and after many years of our relationship, she finally said, "You're telling me the stuff that I've been telling you. You're now mentoring me back." And, who's mentoring who? And I think that's something that I've learned as a mentor over the years is sometimes I feel like I'm doing more learning than I'm imparting on my mentee. So it really truly is a mutually beneficial relationship, because you gain a lot of skills also in just learning how to communicate and learning how to support and empathize and advocate for. And I think that's a great transition to our next question, which really starts highlighting the differences and the opportunities and the areas and the ways that you can mentor. And so often I think we get fixated on the labels. So sometimes there's distinctions made between mentorship and sponsorship. And in fact, this conversation was quite explored at depth at the Women of Water Summit at Mazars in January. And so I wanted to tie that back because there's been a lot of Harvard Business Review articles on this, and a study conducted by David Smith and Brad Johnson at the U.S. Naval Academy and War College, for example, found that when women are mentored by men, they make more money, get more promotions, and have better career outcomes, not because men are better mentors, but because they have more power, typically speaking. So how can we promote more sponsorship of women in water? And what can men do to advocate for and sponsor women? And in general, what can we all do as people to advocate for and sponsor each other? And what type of advice would you give for someone who's looking for a sponsor? We'll start with you, Priya.
That was a lot.
It was a lot, yeah.
Let's break that down a little bit. Maybe we should talk about what we think is a definition, or a definition. It's not, but a definition between what sponsorship and what mentorship is. And that's implicit in your question, Megan. But sponsorship to me often becomes it can still be a mentoring relationship, but it's one that enables somebody to identify and reach additional heights in their career, so to speak. Maybe whether that be promotions or other growth opportunities. Not everything comes in identifiable buckets, like this is a promotion and therefore that means that I'm doing something better. Sometimes it means being assigned to a different project or being asked to do a specific initiative. So sponsorship can help set you up for those opportunities to do more, because somebody in either a position of power, I'll use that word, with that kind of air quotes around it, sees that there's an opportunity out there that you may be a good fit for, or maybe it's even a peer who sees an opportunity to engage you in a project or something else, or help set you up for an opportunity for growth. So I think that's important to at least define that. I mean, why it's important, I think that's pretty clear and self-evident, right? Within the industry, speaking as a woman of color who has more than 20 years in the industry, I have both seen what happens when you don't have sponsorship, or you feel like sponsorship doors are closed to you, and what happens when those doors are very open. And people in power, again, I don't really like that word. It may sound like you have like a cape and like something, but people who have positions of authority and responsibility, whether that's you're a man or you're a woman or however you identify, I think you have a responsibility to look out for people who have aspirational goals that are working for you or around you. Simply, if for no other reason, I know it seems cold-blooded, but for no other reason than we need it for our businesses to be successful. Yes. None of us will be around forever. And so we need to be looking at who are the leaders of tomorrow who can help support the growth of something that we put so much of our time into, our businesses. And so having a sponsor or being identified somebody within the organization who might be able to be beneficial to you, it's a mutually beneficial role. First of all, I think it's important to remember that you are not asking somebody for a favor. You are trying to share who you are and the skills and talents that you have to benefit that person in their discharge of their larger organizational responsibilities. And so sometimes it's a little harder to make happen, to pin down. But that's where I think you leverage your mentorship network. You find people either within your organization or outside of your organization that might have somewhat of a direct or indirect influence to help you get there. And Megan, since it was like a 4-part question, I probably missed part B.
I think you did cover the bulk of it, but something that I wanted to tease out of what you were sharing too is you kind of alluded to it, and I would love for us to explore this in more depth as a group. But it really isn't just about, sponsoring someone to that next job, but providing opportunities. And going back to that perspective side, I have had opportunities to encourage people to even engage with different personalities or get feedback from somebody who might have a different set of insights or experiences. And I think what we're really getting to the heart of is there's a level of mentoring where you're simply providing advice, listening, supporting, and coaching. And then there's a level of mentoring where you can really elevate that experience and help them experience it firsthand. There's that Benjamin Franklin quote of, and I'm going to butcher it, but tell me and I will listen, and show me and I will learn, and involve me and I will, really get it. And I think it's that same point of you can mentor and you can talk, tell and listen, and then there's engage and then empower them to do. And I think that's really what we're talking about.
Let me just add one point before I'm sure Karen and Jay have great feedback for the group. But Jacobs has a really strong inclusion and diversity program that we've been promoting, and I'm very proud to be part of this organization. And one thing that is part of that overall set of thought around inclusivity and diversion is it's not just inclusion, it's not just being invited to the party, it's being asked to dance at the party. And so how can we do that? I think sponsorship is really just that. You're getting put in the door, but being a sponsor or having somebody sponsor you means you actually get included to the dance and asked to dance. And that may take all kinds of forms. That may be, like I said, getting a special project or a lateral promotion or a lateral move that might set you up for better experience. You can get that thing you want down the road. So it is pretty vital from that perspective. So
absolutely. Jay, you look like you want to add some thoughts to that.
Well, a little bit of unfair advantage here. The role of in-house lawyer in my time in the profession has traditionally been seen by corporations as a traditionally insular role. And in-house lawyers, in my experience, or at least the ones who really make a mark, challenge that concept of being truly insular from day one. And the only way to really perform that role at any level is to reject that concept, to push back on that concept of that insular role. And lawyers are trained from their first day in law school to push back you have what's called the Socratic Method in law school, and that is all about just pushing back on any concept, on any statement, question that just doesn't ring true to you. So to put it to Priya's dance analogy in a perspective, we're always trained to push our way into the dance regardless of whoever's in authority. And part of that mentorship is not only push your way into the dance on behalf of those who you have that mentor-mentee relationship with, but to train the mentees to push their way into the dance too. In the legal world, that's probably the easiest part of mentoring someone, because lawyers are intrinsically trained to barge in anyway. So
I'm like getting these mental images of flash mob dances just happening in the middle of the workday.
Lawyers with briefcases dancing.
I know. And some engineers thrown in too.
Yeah.
I want to invite our audience to join in on the conversation, because I haven't seen any chats. And so if you do have questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. We want to make this dance party bigger and invite you all to engage in the conversation. So feel free to even just laugh with us, or let us know that you have questions, or you agree, or you disagree. We'd love to hear from you either way. But with all that being said, this is a great segue, because we've had a really robust discussion on words and what they mean. And sometimes the word mentorship in and of itself can invoke a lot of different responses. And while we're generally viewing it from a positive connotation, sometimes there are some stigmas and misperceptions associated with mentorship. And I know we talked about this before. So Karen, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Sure. I think that mentorship so much depends on what's needed from the relationship, and that would be what should drive it. So I'm reluctant to give something a tag of mentorship, because so many times if you say, well, we'd like you to mentor somebody, they automatically think it's like they have to create a syllabus and a timeline and all these things, and sometimes you do around it because you do have an endpoint that you want this to be ready for a next level or something to fill a skills gap or some kind of item. But usually it's just this a gap. You have those skills. I want you to spend time and figure out how to meaningfully work together and do that. I think that when we talk about mentoring somebody, about helping them with, and you need to identify what it is that the relationship should focus on and what should come out of that relationship. If it's sponsorship, then it's got to be okay to connect this person with the right people, get them into the right meetings, make sure they have a voice at the table, and so on. So I think it's really important that more than the title of mentorship, it's about being clear about what the expectations or possibilities are of that relationship.
And I really like,
and I don't know, I'm sure other people have more to add on that.
I really like it. And I think we've talked a lot about how mentorship can mean a whole spectrum of things, from a single situational type interaction to a multi-year engagement to someone who you meet with on a very frequent and regular basis, or someone that you call just every once in a while. And so much of it depends on your relationship with that person, the personalities and whether they mesh, and we've talked a lot about paired mentorships versus the intuitive, natural connections that happen. And Priya, I'd love to kind of touch on that a little bit more with you. What are your thoughts on what the word mentorship can invoke and how we can kind of go around that? Because I think that's why you came up with that term, micro-mentoring.
Right. So mentorship doesn't always have to be a very formal relationship where you identify each other as I'm your mentor and you are my mentee. It doesn't have to feel like it came out of Star Wars, right? I mean, not all of us are fortunate enough to have a Yoda in our life. We'll put it that way. And so that's why I use the word micro-mentoring, because it behooves all of us as humans who are operating in the world to look around, to keep our eyes open, to be aware of people who are trying to share things with us and be open to taking in some of what they're sharing. And so micro-mentoring happens on a day-to-day basis in your day-to-day work life, with the feedback that you're getting from people on how to, maybe even small things like how to run meetings better, or how to be better prepared for meetings, or maybe if it's even something as like how do you structure, how do you better manage your design project, or how do you better manage the people's expectations who are working for you on a design project? And some of that comes from the people who work for you, and they may not say, I am trying to mentor you, but they're trying to give you feedback. And so if we open up what that definition of mentoring means to be feedback from the world to try to make us better people, if we are open to that, then I think that it expands the art of what is possible. I mean, all of that being said, I'm a full advocate of the mentoring model for, in a formal way. And some of the strongest mentorship relationships I've had have developed out of my organizational responsibilities. I used to be very active in Cal Nevada AWWA, American Water Works Association. And through that network of my ability to be on committees and meet like a lot more senior folks in the industry, I developed really, really strong mentorship relationships that helped me make some critical decisions about when it was time for me to leave my previous employer and to join CH2M Hill at the time, and what kinds of, this just basic things like the idea of corporate fit. And I mean, there's so many things we could talk about here. So, but those who never acknowledged as you are my mentor, I just looked up to these people as trusted advisors and asked for their feedback. And within that, I think it's also really important to understand that you as a person, as a mentee, have a real responsibility to filter information. This idea of failing, that we talked about at the beginning, not wanting to give advice because you think people, you don't want to help, you don't want to promote something that might create failure. As people, we have a responsibility for our own actions And so when you get feedback from somebody, you have to take it in and gut check it. And it's important to have multiple different perspectives from outside and from inside. You need to know what your own self is saying to be able to say, this makes sense for me, or I need to file this as maybe something I need to take up again in 6 months, or this doesn't make sense. So mentoring, that relationship also needs to be calibrated in terms of, what are you as a person also thinking about this, applying your own emotional intelligence, your mental intelligence to come up with decisions that make the best sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you wanted to add, Jay?
Well, I'm in agreement with Priya on this. I think one of the biggest misperceptions associated with mentorship is this idea that we have from pop culture of this linear relationship with mentor. Priya brought up Yoda from Star Wars. I mean, us of a certain age have that, and a Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid. And while they're all great examples and a heartwarming example of a mentor, that whole track of that mentor-mentee relationship there looks a bit linear. You go from point A to point B within the movie, and then everything is neatly tied up at the end. And that's not quite how it works. It's situational. It could involve someone who doesn't necessarily direct reports to you. It could be an age difference where the younger person is the mentee. You never know where it necessarily can come from at any moment in time. So joining organizations like an AWWA, or becoming more active in your local bar associations or NAWC, or community, even outside of work, your community in nonprofit organizations, it can come from anywhere. And you have to be able as a mentee to filter that. And not only that, but have the wisdom or gain the wisdom to know when the opportunity comes where you can have that and grab that. And it could come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Priya, I just wanted to highlight, you brought up professional organizations, and I grew up through the California Water Environment Association, and currently serve as vice president on the board. But I remember when I first joined the organization, that was where I sat through so many meetings and realized, how can I make meetings different? And so, now people say, wow, that was a great meeting. And I'm like, yes, only because I sat through thousands of them and eventually realized, setting a meeting purpose, having an agenda, giving people expectations, and letting people know when the meeting is going to end. All of those are really critical things, and things that I learned through professional association involvement. And those are opportunities that different mentors provided me by encouraging me to be in committee leadership, to encourage me to say yes to these opportunities. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up. But also just the point that, we don't have to think about these linear examples as the only example, right? And to bring up another cliched example is, I think sometimes we view finding our mentor almost like finding the one. Yeah. And it isn't like a lifelong partnership where you're committed until death do you part. You can dance with many different dance partners, and it could be a quick dance off, or it could be a long fancy dance, and I think the thing to remember is that there are going to be so many different ways that someone's going to mentor you, and so many different ways that you can mentor them. And so I just want to share a quick story. We did a session on mentorship a few years ago with our Women in Water group here in Orange County. And typically our attendees vary very much in age and experience and, role and so forth, everywhere from college students all the way to retirees. And when we chose the topic of mentorship, it was eye-openingly obvious. All of our attendees were in the first half of their career. We actually had a lot of new attendees show up because there was so much excitement and buzz about it. People invited their friends. And all of the individuals that I would have viewed as experienced mentors, people who could provide insight, they didn't show up. So I actually called them and said, why didn't you come? And they're like, well, I don't need to know about mentorship. And I said, but you missed an opportunity to meet someone where you can connect or share insights on your experience with mentorship. And in fact, we even had a couple attendees who had said, someone asked me to be their mentor, but I don't know how to mentor. So I figured the session would help. And so I think just having these conversations and empowering people, this isn't like you have to wait for the one to engage in it. You can start with little things, with the micro mentoring, the mentoring moments where it's just giving someone feedback or just listening, even not necessarily giving them input, but just listening and creating a space for people to talk. That also is a mentorship opportunity. And so I really appreciate you all really diving into addressing some of these stigmas or even preconceived notions that we might have. And I think that plays really well into our conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? The whole point of all of this is to be more inclusive to everyone and to create more equitable opportunities for everyone, regardless of who they are, where they came from, or what they're about. And so the Brookings Institute recently published a study on the water workforce, highlighting that nearly 85% of our industry are still male and 2/3 are still white, and pointing to the fact that we do need younger and more diverse talent from all ages, all walks of life, all backgrounds. And we've talked a little bit about, how diversity, equity, and inclusion play a role with mentorship, and how mentorship and sponsorship can help create a more diverse workforce, not just from a racial and ethnic background, but also from a perspective background, also from an experience background. We tend to be very systematic in our hiring practices of hiring certain backgrounds, hiring certain education, hiring certain experiences. But sometimes we've also found that bringing in people with different work experience from outside the sector can also shed light on more innovative practices, like Jay said, pushing back on how we do things instead of sitting back on this is how we've always done things. So what are some other benefits that having a more diverse and inclusive workforce can provide to the industry as a whole? What's the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion? And how can mentorship help with that? We'll start with you, Priya.
So I'm going to give you guys an example, a real life example. So what we usually in the consulting industry, the people we put out in front of our clients have a lot of experience, 20, 25 years, lots of gray hair, like we say about the civil engineering and the water industry in particular. That experience is really what drives it. Some of our public agencies, though, our clients, they're seeing a lot of turnover. We referred to the silver tsunami earlier. So the way that we have relied in the past on winning work, or those preferences of the older client base, is no longer necessarily the case. And so we have to stay true with the times, and having younger people be part of our sales process, be in front of our clients, providing their input on the kinds of information or how data gets presented to a client in like a procurement, like a proposal or a statement of qualifications, ends up being really important, because they might know what one of their peers wants to see, and they may not want to see 2 columns of text for pages on paper. In fact, I know they don't. So I mean, it's just like simple business metrics. Like if you have a more inclusive, a younger panel, if your organization chart reflects diversity in your organization, that speaks to your client. All those things are kind of simple ways to make people on both sides of the fence, our clients and ourselves, our staff, feel heard and feel like they are an important part of the process. So that's just one example, and I'll let Karen and Jay chime in with others.
I think we lost Karen's video, so we'll go to you, Jay.
Well, we talk about the silver tsunami. We talk about the aging of the workforce and the need to really make sure that we're identifying and fostering the next generation of leadership for your organization or your company. And my observation, having both been in-house and been in private practice advising companies, has been that the good companies, the ones who are really good at this, are going to wind up with that diverse leadership of the workforce, because it will have meant that they have found the best leaders. I'm very biased about Middlesex Water. I'm very biased about my own company. That being said, strictly my opinion, I think my company has done an outstanding job as of that. As I've looked and seen the process up front as to how the next generation of leaders are identified, fostered, and selected, it certainly turns out that many of them are women, that where once we were in an industry where it was 5%, 10%, 15% of the leadership structure being women, we're now at 45%, 50%, 55% in a relatively short amount of time. And going back, if I were in Middlesex Water's case, to look back and see in terms of who has been selected for a leadership position, whether it's on our board of directors or in our executive leadership team or in our core leadership team, I'm always convinced that, having seen this up front, that the most qualified and most prepared person was the one who was accepted. And by the way, they happen to be women. And that has become more ordinary. And that in and of itself, especially given what I've seen in the last 22 years over time, is itself extraordinary.
Absolutely. And I think that's great that you guys track those statistics and are able to share with others the amount of improvement you have been able to make in creating a more inclusive and equitable workforce, and how that really provides a business benefit. Karen, in an HR role, I'm sure you have a lot to speak to this. So what is the business case for having a more diverse and inclusive workforce, and how can mentorship play a role in that? Oh, I think your microphone got disconnected. We'll have to come back to you on that. But that segues really well into our next question. And I know this is one that Karen really wanted to speak to, so hopefully she's able to get her microphone reconnected. But in terms of diversity and a variety of challenges, the current pandemic has also shed light on specific populations that are disproportionately impacted by the current situation. So, for example, we have women and other parents impacted by distance learning outcomes. We have young professionals navigating new office cultures in a remote environment. We have college graduates who have entered the workforce and have never actually stepped foot in an office. We have so many different nuanced challenges that we may not have necessarily thought of up front because none of us saw this pandemic coming, in addition to all of the mental and physical health challenges that some of our workforce also currently faces. So how are some ways that mentorship can help provide the support and guidance that some of these individuals may be looking for? We'll start with you, Priya.
So I actually think this is, it's a really critical question, Megan, so I'm glad we're talking about it. In a time like this, the methods that we use for survival and thriving in the past aren't necessarily the same tools that we need to be applying now. And if there was ever a time for all of us to try to dive into to elevate our own sense of personal sensitivity, I think now is that time. And it's harder than ever because we're all so taxed, right? We're just tired. I can speak for myself personally, but I've also observed it in others. But we do have to try a little harder. So I'll give you guys some very simple examples. For myself, even though my coworkers might hate me for it, I always go on camera for our video, for our meetings. And it forces people to turn their camera on, but then it also forces us to look at each other and connect. And so right now is really an opportunity for us both as leaders within an organization, or also, because I actually think mentorship happens at every age. Like, I still want mentorship, even though I am where I am in my career. And having that human connectivity really enforces this idea that we're part of a broader community, whether it be at work or elsewhere. So taking the time to simply ask how somebody's doing, and asking them about, if this is at work and you want to keep it work focused, asking them about their work challenges and what's going on, and listening, and then providing feedback if you have feedback, or saying, you know what, maybe you can even try talking to this person about this challenge because I know they face something separate or different, similar to what you're dealing with. and just connecting people. So that is where mentorship, I think, right now plays a really important role in today's way of working. Is it's not just about growing people and advising people. It's about forming human connections and helping people know that they're important. And I think that really matters right now more than ever.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing up that intentionality that you bring into connecting with people at a human level. And I will just share that that's something that I started doing from the beginning of the pandemic, is just checking in on how are you doing today. And honestly, I actually learned this from my students. So I teach at Chapman University as well, and we transitioned from in-person to virtual on 2 days' notice. And so, I had students who were packing up, moving across the country on 2 days' notice. It was kind of a mess. And some of them started reaching out to me privately and sharing with me some of the awful, awful, tragic things that they were going through, whether it was losing a grandparent right away, or, some had difficult single parent challenges with younger siblings that they also had to watch while trying to be in class, and so many different unique challenges that I just started doing a check-in on, how are you doing today? And yes, while we are taught historically, separate that work and family dynamic, there is also an element of just asking, how are you and your family doing? That really helps humanize that connection with our coworkers and recognize that they have lives outside of the workplace. And so some of my favorite organizational behavior thought leaders have been encouraging these mental and emotional check-ins with your staff and with your peers. And I think it's such a great example of that simple, not even formal mentoring connection, of just connecting with people on an emotional level. And Karen, I'm so glad you're back, because this was a question that you had actually suggested, and really talking about how the pandemic has shed light on specific populations and how mentorship can help provide the support and guidance that some of these individuals are looking for. Oh no, we don't have your mic again. Oh. I'm wondering if you would be able to type in the chat your response, because I really do want to hear from you. And I know that our audience will likely want to hear from you as well. But I'll transition to you, Jay, really quickly. If you have any thoughts on this, or
Well, certainly the current COVID-19 pandemic, talk about encouraging folks to work outside of their comfort zones. Here's your ultimate idea.
So should we blame you for this, Jay, for pushing us outside of our comfort zones?
It's not exactly, I don't think, what anybody had in mind, but it's certainly an example of it. But again, it really goes back to that basic. How do you respond when you are pushed outside, whether it's on a small little project or something where you're in the middle of a pandemic? And not only are you outside your comfort zone as a mentee, but you see your mentors are also not in their comfort zone as well, for a myriad of reasons. But I think much of what Priya had covered, I think, is certainly ways to show leadership and show guidance through human connection. There are, we can't be together in person, but having video conferences and insisting that they are just that, video conferences, is a way to maintain that connection. Asking how people are doing and being understanding. Because you as a mentor are experiencing many of the same problems as they are. At any moment, I could have a child or my dog be coming right through here, basically, at any moment's notice. And those who I mentor are having probably larger issues with that, having younger kids. So it's all there. But I think what Priya covered is exactly how you get through that, and in an unintentional way, because certainly none of us had a worldwide pandemic on our 2020 bingo cards when the year started, but it's you're developing leaders in a way, because leaders now, or younger leaders now, have had the experience of going through something that no other generation had to go through for the last 102 years.
Yeah. I really think that you touched on something really great, Jay, is really how do we reframe this current situation as an opportunity? And it really does give us an opportunity for growth. And really, if you think about it, in history, shared experiences are what connect and bond us together. And this is one unique shared experience that the entire planet is going through together. And so, if you look at past history and past shared experiences, generally it was one community at a time or one nation at a time or one continent at a time. Here we have a shared experience where it's literally every single human being is being touched in some way, shape, or form by the current pandemic. And I think it's these examples that we're providing, these little actionable, tangible examples that provide all of us to have an impact in helping promote more resilience and more human connection amongst our peers and our colleagues. And Karen also brought up in the chat that she really thinks it's critical that we check in with each person and hear what they're experiencing. And I think we've all tried doing that. And I will share, I've done it with some of my clients, and they hadn't experienced that within their own meetings. And I got feedback saying, thank you so much for doing that. We're now doing that in all of our meetings. And so I think those are also ways to just kind of showcase these little things can have such a huge impact. And it's not big. It's just asking someone, how are you doing? And what I really like about Karen's second chat was really about how do we then take these feedback, these insights, this opportunity to create organizational change that creates lasting benefits for the organization. So in her case, if women or parents are having a larger adverse impact simply because of homeschooling, how can we figure out how to remove those kinds of barriers to success? Is it creating a flexible workplace, letting them know a little background noise is okay? Karen, I'm hoping you're back on mic. We're going to give it one more shot. Oh, do you want to say anything else to add to that?
She can't.
Oh, no. So, but I really like Karen's point of taking this time to see, can we do something differently? Are there areas in our organizational processes that maybe could be refined or influenced to be a little better? And does this situation give us that impetus for change? And so I think those are all really, really great questions. It's a perfect segue actually to some of our audience questions. So Nija from I hope I'm not butchering your name, from our audience asked, is mentoring in small groups effective or should it always be one-on-one? And I know I have an answer to that, but I'm sure some of you do as well. Priya, do you want to take that question?
I think you need both in your life, like everything else. A little bit of diversity is helpful. Have your one-on-ones because you can theoretically go to a deeper level of trusted exchange. You have privacy to soundboard on issues that you may not be comfortable sharing in a group. But when you listen in a group, just like when you're with your friends, you get that perspective of what multiple people are thinking or feeling or experiencing. And there's an opportunity to share, just like we're doing today, right? We're building off of each other's thoughts.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Priya, we need all of the above, right? Mm-hmm. And so we need older mentors, younger mentors inside the organization, outside the organization, formal, informal, you name it. Jay, do you want to add anything to that?
Small groups or one-on-one? Well, the answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's paid by the minute.
Chase had a fabulous question too. As a mentor, what are the keys to engagement and follow through by the mentee? And how do you motivate through more challenging discussions? Does anyone want to take that first?
As a mentee, I think the key signals as a mentee is you have to have the natural curiosity to challenge back and not take it necessarily at face value, everything that the mentor says. You can't be shy about it. So if you're not clear as to what a mentor may be instructing you to do, or if a mentor makes a statement that just doesn't ring true to you, ask the questions. Keep asking questions. The who, the what, the why. Ask continuous questions. And until you have a comfort level as to what you think you want to do or whether you think you are gaining mastery over the subject. But I think the most important thing that mentee can do, keep asking questions.
Yeah.
I think having multiple perspectives and understanding, just like one human can't provide you everything you need in life, you might need a different sort of set of mentors to deal with different issues that you might have in life.
Yeah.
And we're out of time, but something that really helps with that is having what I call a personal board of directors, which is where you have a number of people who are on your personal board of directors that provide you that 360-degree perspective. They reflect that diversity from you. You want people who are different than you on that board of directors. And that's, I think, also how you work through challenging things. You solicit different opinions, and then you take responsibility for coming up with a decision that is uniquely yours.
Yeah, we actually have time allocated for a few more questions, so we'll definitely take them because we have a few more coming in. The only thing that I wanted to add is, in case it hasn't been made abundantly clear to everybody who's here with us today, whether you're a mentee or mentor, there is no like magic handbook that we're all handed at some point in our career where it's like, you have now hit 10 years of experience. Here is your mentor guidebook, and this is how you're going to mentor everyone. There's no one way to do it. And so I think it's a challenge for both the mentor and mentee to also expand upon personal accountability and communication, because I have seen where I've participated in some formal mentorship programs with local universities where students come and they're excited to have a mentor, but then they kind of drop off because there was no accountability. And so I let them know up front, now I'm making this investment into time, spending time with you and providing you insight, guidance, and feedback. I also need you to be accountable and letting me know how you want to grow from this experience, what you want to gain from me, and then be consistent with your check-ins. And so in a much more formal setting like that, having those mutually agreed upon expectations and boundaries, and having those and being accountable for your portion of the work is really, really important. In a less formal setting, you know, if that relationship spreads apart, comes back, that's up to both of you guys. But like everything we've been saying, it's a dance. It takes two to tango. And so that accountability has to happen on both sides. Jessica has a really great question. And I think we kind of touched on this and we can expand upon this, but what are some important ways to sustain a mentor-mentee relationship long term? Maybe some things that may not be as obvious.
Well, in my opinion, like most relationships, it just depends on whether you guys have spark, chemistry, that kind of thing. You can't necessarily force any long-term relationship. But for something to be successful, I think it's always good for that exchange to go both ways. Get to know your mentor as a human, and share the outcomes of their input and their feedback, and help them understand how you're progressing on your journey. And that makes that a little bit more satisfying to a mentor to understand what impact they may or may not have had. Hopefully they had some kind of impact. And then that helps grow the relationship and mature the relationship over time, because things will change. And I think, Megan, you pointed that out in the beginning. You know, somebody that was originally a mentor for you, you were providing that same feedback. And I've had the same sort of experience, somebody who was very strongly in that mentor-mentee kind of hierarchy. Over time, we've kind of grown to be more friends. Mm-hmm. And now we still are each other's sounding boards, but we're often sharing things kind of from the same perspective. So it's an organic process that you have to be willing to invest in, and it has to be with somebody who wants to invest with you.
Yes. Do you want to add anything, Jay?
Well, I think Jessica actually illustrates really the most important way, in addition to everything Priya just said and that I agree with, to sustain that relationship. And it's the trait that Jessica just showed, curiosity. Mm-hmm. Curiosity mm-hmm. to ask the question and to keep asking the question. Even if it's a short-term relationship with one mentor, it could lead to another relationship with another mentor, and a longer one. Or even if it's with a long-time mentor, it could lead to a relationship with another shorter-term mentor. But you have to have curiosity in addition to chemistry in order to sustain that relationship. Never stop asking questions.
Yeah. And I just wanted to emphasize what you said, Priya, that it's organic and that it's two ways. You want to invest in them and they want to invest in you. And so some mentor-mentee relationships, it may be one-sided where you want to continue on the engagement, but maybe it's not the time commitment that they have time for, or maybe it's just not what they're looking for in their current season. And like any relationship, it's also being able to let go, and then, and maybe it'll come back. And I think the key there is has it transcended to a friendship? And I think sometimes I have seen this with some less experienced professionals or younger individuals. I hate generalizing, but where they view mentor-mentee relationships as very transactional. If you have nothing else to give me, I'm moving on. And so then there's not really that organic friendship connection, right? If you just simply like talking to that person and spending time with them, then that's something that has a potential to last long term. But if you need something, like that light bulb moment every conversation, that's not likely to happen. And so if you decide, I've had 5 conversations and there's no light bulb moment, I don't really enjoy talking to them, that's it. Well, then that relationship has seen the end of its course. But if you find yourself connecting with someone where even if you didn't necessarily get anything tangible out of it in that immediate conversation, if you find value in just connecting with them and you enjoy talking to them and you see them as a friend, then those relationships are more likely to last far beyond, what a formal mentor-mentee relationship might look like. And as Priya and I have both experienced, those often turn into mutual friendships as opposed to a strict hierarchical mentor-mentee relationship.
Absolutely. And they're very rewarding because of that.
Yeah. Teresa has a great question too. So for those seeking a mentor, how do you suggest approaching a potential mentor? Or if you see potential in someone, how do you approach someone you would like to mentor? And I'll let either of you guys take that first.
Jay can go first.
In terms of seeking a mentor, you do exactly that. You seek out and you ask, and you ask, and you not necessarily ask a direct question, will you be my mentor? But just asking,
will you be my mentor?
With me?
Yeah, we don't have to be Mr. Rogers here, but I mean, we do have to, ask the questions. Ask them, what is not ringing true to you? What do you want to learn? What is it that you want to know from that person? And take the genuine interest to ask the question, and then it grows organically from there. In terms of how you see potential in someone, it's something that takes training and years to really be able to spot that. And when you do move into leadership positions, you gain more experience in evaluating others, both formally within an institution during annual review or semi-annual review for those companies that have it. So to some extent, as a mentor, you do see that to begin with, but just because you're able as a mentor to identify that in a formal process doesn't mean that you're all seeing. And there may be people not in your department, maybe people who you don't interact with on an everyday basis, who have that potential. And it does take more training to be able to find that. But that's where the mentee comes in, to have that curiosity. Again, it comes back to curiosity and asking the questions and taking the general interest. Something that can be so intimidating, yet it's so easy as to how that begins to form a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, and I think, Jay, that's great. And if you guys are open to it, I think sometimes individuals simply can benefit from simple modeling. And so I just wanted to say, Priya, I've really connected with a lot of the things that you shared, and I'd love to chat with you further on this. Do you have some time for coffee or a Zoom chat later?
I'd love to. And Megan, that was going to be my number one suggestion. My answer to that question was really, let's not start off thinking we're having a lifetime commitment. We have to be, penguin mentors relationship, mentee relationship the rest of our lives, right? Let's start off understanding that we can have low stakes coffee over this kind of a internet chat sort of thing, and try to form a relationship with somebody in the sense of just asking about who they are and what they're about, and then telling them up front, you know, you really want to meet them, and that you have a particular challenge that you have right now, a specific issue that you wanted to bounce past them, and give them an idea of what it is that you're dealing with, especially if it's a stranger, and just say, would you have an hour for me? And just leave it at that and see what grows.
Yeah.
You gotta plant a seed and then see if, you know, test it, have some social awareness, and do a little watering over time.
Yeah. And then at the conclusion of that, if you find that you connected with them and you could tell that they connected with you, you can ask for a subsequent coffee date or whatever and let it kind of go. Right. And Jay, I think you model to Jessica what a potential individual who wants to mentor someone could say is, you know, Jessica, you demonstrated this quality of curiosity. I'm happy to explore this more with you. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. That's a really simple way to plant the seed of saying, I'm happy to spend time with you and give you feedback and insight. And so, Teresa, I think if you want to approach someone that you want to mentor, I highly suggest taking that type of approach of saying, if you have questions, open that door. I'm happy to be here for you. Or if you ever want to talk about X, Y, and Z, you know, I'm happy to make time for you or have that opportunity. Any other last thoughts before? Awesome. Well, I think we have, go ahead, Jay.
No, just to thank you for having me.
Yes,
well,
thank you.
And I want to thank all of our attendees who are hanging on with us, as well as our organizers and all of our panelists. And Karen, I hope you can hear us. I really enjoyed our preparatory conversations, as well as, you know, this panel discussion today. And for those of you who are still with us, we actually have time allocated where we're all available to meet with you guys one-on-one as well. So I know several of you have asked some really fantastic questions through the chat, but we actually have a networking opportunity. And so there are two ways that you can do that. You can either select the People tab on the top right corner and choose another attendee to message or video chat with. So if there's a particular individual that you'd like to connect with, you can connect that way. The other way you can do so is also use the networking tab on the left side of the screen, and that will allow you to match randomly with any attendee. So if you want to have a specific person that you want to talk to, click on the People button on the top right side of your screen. If you're open to just meeting with anybody at random and are simply looking to connect with people outside of your network, the networking button on the left side allows you to do that. And so we'll give everyone a couple minutes, but we have the next 15 plus or minus a few minutes allocated for networking. So Jay, Priya, Karen, and I are all available to speak, and you're also welcome to network with other attendees of this webinar as well. So with that being said, thank you all so much for your time. This has been so much fun, and I'm really looking forward to staying connected with you all. So feel free to find any of us on LinkedIn. We can also share our contact information and continue on the discussion. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, you guys.